Hi, my name is Sunny Jones Ford, and I'm a licensed clinical therapist. If you are tired of hearing about the word mindfulness, if you are tired of hearing about how you should go meditate or how you should go take a walk or how you should do breath work, I understand. Those words have been used so much that they feel like buzzwords. And so, what I think is most important is that you make mindfulness yours. Now, when I say that, you may also be rolling your eyes or saying, "Oh, what do you mean by that? Make it mine." And what I mean by making it yours is making it meaningful to you and making mindfulness something that makes sense for you. It's not about perfection. It's not about doing it the way that somebody else does it. It's about the way that you do it, what it takes for you to be more focused in the present moment. And then that is what will help to create a pathway to feeling more focused, more calm, and more grounded. When it comes to mindfulness, I want to start off with the basics. What is mindfulness? So, a great way of thinking about mindfulness is it's a practice. It's a practice of paying attention on purpose to the present moment. And oftentimes, when we talk about mindfulness, we also talk about trying to practice non judgment. If you would like to add that in as a part of your practice, feel free. But it doesn't have to be a part of your mindfulness practice in order for it to be mindfulness. So, really, what you want to think about is paying attention on purpose to the present moment. So, being in the here and now. Mindfulness is ancient, it's not new. For centuries, many different cultures have used mindfulness without even labeling it that way as a part of their daily lives. It's something that's been central to their culture. Like, for example, some cultures do tea ceremonies. Growing up, I spent a lot of time with my great grandmother. And so, some of my earliest memories when it comes to mindfulness, and of course, when I was little, I couldn't have labeled it this way, but that's the beauty of it, was that after school, I would spend time with my great grandmother in her garden. And so she would teach me how to dig a hole, how much water to put into the soil, how to plant the flower. And I remember spending hours doing that with her. And so even when we think of mindfulness, I think sometimes we think it's about sitting in silence. And yes, that is also a form of mindfulness, but spending quality time with my grandmother focused on one task and learning something new is also a form of mindfulness. So I think we can really expand our vision for what mindfulness is. We can also make it more meaningful, especially depending on how tied you are to your culture. You can even ask your parents or your great grandparents if you have access to them, or even just reading about your own culture in terms of how mindfulness was a part of your culture before it was even labeled that way. That makes it so much more meaningful than a trend that we see where it's about maybe going to a studio to do yoga, which, yes, is also a form of mindfulness. There's nothing wrong with that either. But there is a way to expand the concept so that you can make it more meaningful for you. So, some additional examples for what mindfulness can look like for you. And these are examples that you may not naturally think about. And so one example is taking time to cook a meal slowly. That might mean that on a Sunday, if you have some extra time and you have time where it doesn't need to be a quick meal, because sometimes we do need quick meals. So that's a reality. But when you can set aside some time to make something from scratch, or even if you're not making it from scratch, maybe there's a dressing you want to make for your salad. And so that may not take a ton of time to do it, but it is requiring you to think about the measurements and how much you need, what ingredients you need, and things of that sort in order to make the dressing. And it also requires more of your present attention in order to do so. So that's a form of mindfulness. Another form of mindfulness is gardening. For example, I used to live in New York City and I didn't necessarily have access to a backyard where I could garden. And so my version of gardening in 2020 was taking care of plants. So that is another form of mindfulness. And so what that might mean is that you might decide that it's not just about putting water into your plants that day. There's some of your plants that might need a little bit of misting if you have a plant that's more tropical in nature. So you take some time to like really do that intentionally. Another way of thinking about mindfulness is really tuning into your bodily sensations. And that's something that's not always easy to do. How are you feeling? So, for example, if you take a second to do a body scan, you may notice that your shoulders are up here and it's little adjustments. And so they might literally be up here, but you might notice that they're a little scrunched or that your shoulders are curved in a bit or something of that sort. So if you take a second to notice, like even where your shoulders are, then you can also take a second to tighten and then release. So that also can help you to like reposition your shoulders and allow you to release some stress as well too. That's a form of mindfulness. And so mindfulness can look so many different ways. Now, here's another form of mindfulness that I really will say is a practice. And I think it's something that takes time and it's something that you don't necessarily have to get quote unquote right or anything of that sort. But it's just even taking time to think about where do you feel certain emotions within your body. Now, what I mean by that is that when I'm feeling anxious, I tend to feel it in my stomach. Like my stomach tightens a little bit when I'm feeling anxious. And so that's something that I've started to notice. And so for me, that might mean that standing up or walking can be really helpful in those moments. Or when I'm feeling a lot of tension, I tend to feel it like from shoulders up. So there might be tension in other parts of my body, but at least by taking a moment to be present, I am realizing that I'm feeling really tense from the shoulders up. So then that might mean I might take a second to even just like adjust my head from side to side and give my neck a little bit of a break because I am feeling that tension as well too. So mindfulness can go into that realm of being able to pay attention to how your body is feeling. I'll also give another example of mindfulness along these lines. It also can be the awareness of your environment and how it's impacting you. So at the end of the day, you've had a really busy day and you've had a lot of stimuli coming your way. You've been answering emails, you've been running from place to place, running errands, picking up your kids from school, doing all the different things that may be a part of your life. When you get home, if you then maybe turn on the TV or if you pick up your phone and start answering more emails or turn on all the lights, then that's additional stimuli that's also being processed by your body. And you may or may not notice it as it being something that actually isn't feeling great for you until you take that pause and take that moment of mindfulness to actually maybe make the decision to turn off the TV for the first 15, 20 minutes or so before while you're home, so you have a moment to actually settle into your environment. Reduce the sound within your environment. Maybe you intentionally decide what kind of lighting you want to have in your home in that moment as well. So mindfulness can absolutely also be just taking time to realize how your environment is impacting you and then doing what you can and what's in your control to be able to change your environment so that it can help you to feel more settled and more calm. So I think having a lot of different tools is really helpful. And so what I mean by that is I think that using cues or even using transitions can really be helpful to help you to create a pause and a second for you to actually remind yourself that you have choice and then you can then make a more informed decision. So something that I really love to talk to my clients about is creating transitions in their lives. And so it's actually something that a lot of schools have implemented with children. So yes, children need transitions in order oftentimes to go from one, even to go from the house to the car. They're having a transition there in terms of even cueing your child to like, hey, this is what we're ready to do. Cue your child to get your shoes on if you have children, things of that sort. So that's just an example. But even if you don't have children, it's just the fact that even as adults, it's important that we find ways to transition from one thing to the next. And so it's even just implementing some mindfulness around why it's important for us to not just hop from one thing to the next as much as we can. So, what we can do to actually start to implement transitions is even ahead of time thinking to yourself, when I get to work, the first thing I would like to do is to go fill up my water bottle with water. It's actually not to turn on my computer or my laptop. If you are maybe there's a day where you have to rush in and that happens, and so that's okay, but on days where you don't need to rush in and literally just, start, then it's cueing yourself to have somewhat of a routine or ritual, and a ritual is something is that you really implement and you do consistently for a long time as a part of, like, your daily life and something that you really make sure that you wanna do on the regular. And so either with a routine or ritual, you would maybe decide for yourself when I get to work, the order that I would like to have things go is I get there, I put my coat down, I go and grab some water or fill up my water with my water bottle with water. I then return back to my desk. I take a second to make sure that I'm feeling comfortable in my chair. So I'm grounding myself first, making adjustments to my chair so that I also feel comfortable. And then I turn on my laptop or my computer. I will also say this, I don't think mindfulness is all about just being productive or trying to find ways to be more productive and kind of get into the productivity trap. Nonetheless, I do think that mindfulness can help us to be more productive. So, in that sense, if we're talking about work, then you set yourself up in a way where you're entering into your workday from more of a calm and grounded space. And then when you turn on your computer, turn on your laptop, you then have reminded yourself that you have choice because you made all these choices. You've done all these things prior to actually turning on your laptop. And then from there, you can then decide what's next in terms of work. So you've already set the scene for yourself in order to like transition into your workday from a more mindful perspective. Something we can do when it comes to interacting with our children in a way that we feel like is mindful and with others as well. We can actually think about it as it doesn't have to be big acts. It doesn't have to be big moments. And so we can have moments of mindfulness with our children that are actually relatively simple. For example, you're already in the car, you're headed home, and you're headed home. And after you head home, I'm sure there's a lot of things you need to do when you get home. But say there's a song that comes on the radio. I don't know if people really listen to the radio, but say there's a song that comes on the playlist, and the song that comes on the playlist, and it's a song that you and your child both know and you enjoy it. You decide to turn up the volume and sing it with your child, and you allow your inner child free, and you give your permission to your child to like belt the song out. That is a moment of mindfulness and connection because the two of you are actually putting your focus and attention to the song and also connecting with each other through the song as well too. So what I would say about that is that yes, I think absolutely a lot of us have really long to-do lists, a lot of things that we need to do, and we don't necessarily live in worlds where we have a lot of hands to help us out all the time necessarily as well too. And so because of that, I think we can find moments of mindfulness or moments of connection in this case that can help us to be present with the people in our lives or be present with our children as well too. And so it's the same thing, like you're walking to school with your child or walking into the school building. Maybe you take a second to play I Spy as you're walking in. That's another moment of connection, but also mindfulness because you're literally pointing out things that you see along the way. And so the examples I gave were more so for younger children, except for actually singing in the car is not. That can happen at any age. That could happen with your adult child as well too. So it's really just identifying those opportunities where you can connect with someone in a mindful way and taking it.